If you don't mind, I'll do the invocation, and Commissioner Pickens will do the Pledge of Allegiance. If you don't mind, bow your heads. Lord, thank you so much for this time we get to share together, Lord. We're just honored to have your hand on our county. We're honored to live in this wonderful country that we do have these freedoms, Lord. We're just so blessed. We just ask that you help us to just please pass these blessings on to others, Lord. And we say these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes of November 28th, BOCC, and the regular meeting November 14th of the regular workshop.
Okay, we have a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those in not favor say the same thing. Okay, motion moves. We have a proclamation of the One Book, One Putnam. And if Mr. Harvey doesn't mind, he's going to read the proclamation. And Steve Crowley.
Get my partners in crime to come up with me.
Mr. Chairman, proclamation One Book, One Putnam, 2017, Putnam County Read Rocket Boys by Homer Hickman. Whereas regarding reading is an important activity for all of the residents in Putnam County. And whereas less than half of our adult American population now reads literature, the Board of County Commissioners wishes to encourage all of the county's residents, both young and old, to read. And whereas reading is one way to create bonds within a family and among friends and neighbors. We want to get everyone in the community, from high school students and office workers to public officials, senior citizens, to read and discuss a great book together. And whereas One Book, One Putnam is encouraging all residents to read Homer Hickman's book, Rocket Boys, a story of a boy who follows his dream against adversity. Whereas this program aims to revive reading, therefore, in support of this goal, there will be book discussions, community activities, and knowledgeable speakers. And whereas the Board of County Commissioners knows the residents of Putnam County will benefit and learn from reading this book. And whereas One Book, One Putnam is celebrating 13 years of encouraging reading throughout Putnam County. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Putnam County Board of County Commissioners does hereby support learning through reading as promoted by One Book, One Putnam, and proclaims January and February 2018 as One Book, One Putnam reading season, and congratulates One Book, One Putnam on its 14 years of promoting reading and discussion. Mr. Chairman, I move this for approval.
Thank you.
Second it.
And we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. All those not? Thank you. It moves.
Yeah.
While, if I might, for just a minute, it is our 14th year of promoting reading in Putnam County. And even though I've retired from the library system, I still get to talk about One Book, One Putnam, which is just a really exciting thing. And this year we are truly excited. This is about space. This is about a young boy who, despite growing up in the coal fields of West Virginia, and has a dream and pursues that dream. We had a dream with One Book, One Putnam this year to have an astronaut come to Putnam County. So on March 7th from 7 to about 9, 6 to 8. I'm date and time dyslexic. We are really excited to have Nicole Stott coming to Putnam County. She's a NASA astronaut. She's retired. She's the first astronaut to have ever painted in space.
Oh, wow.
She did some watercolors in space, and one of the stories goes that she left her watercolors up there and was encouraging other astronauts to paint, but eventually they couldn't find them, so we think her paintings are lost in space now. So we just really appreciate, as always, all the support that the Board of County Commissioners give to us. I challenge you all to read the book and to attend our events. There'll be some movie showings, some book discussions, and just all sorts of fun excitement starting in January and ending up in March. So I just encourage you, as always, to be reminded that reading rocks. So thank you all very much.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Steve, give us those dates again.
Yeah.
It's March.
She will be here on March the 7th, and that's the finale. It will be at the Women's Club of Palatka. Our kickoff is January. See, I tell you, I am date dyslexic. January 9th. 5:30 to 7:30. I have this little bird. 5:30 to 7:30 at the
Golf course.
Palatka
Clubhouse.
Golf Course, and that's also going to be exciting. We've been talking to the Northeast Florida Rocket Association, and we're going to have a rocket launch.
Oh, cool.
So anyone want to volunteer to go into space? We'll take a volunteer.
Our chairman will always do that.
Well, isn't there the Goddard Space Center and that kind of thing? But seriously, we look forward to a wonderful reading season, and as always, do appreciate all the support that you give One Book, One Putnam.
Good deal.
And in turn, we thank this group for all the wonderful reads over the years you just mentioned. And I asked the name of the author from 2 years ago. I thought it was last year, How Time Flies. But Laura Lee Smith, I read in the Times-Union, she has a new novel out, and another one on North Florida. So thank you for bringing her forward 2 years ago.
Just to take about one more minute of your time, my fine partners in crime that are here today, Lula Gale Griffiths, Bob Lee, Andrea Gillen, Harry Gillian, and Yvonne. And
Everybody knows it.
we all know Yvonne, but unfortunately, Yvonne, I guess, is not going to be here much longer, and she's going to join the ranks of the wonderfully retired from Putnam County. And
I too will be hanging on to one book.
so we appreciate that. So have a great day. We appreciate
Merry
you.
Christmas.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Get up here.
Okay.
I don't miss my contacts, but this is blurry. I'm gonna take a couple.
Don't sit down, Will. Where's Carol?
Don't sit down. It's funny.
Is anyone here to represent Ronnie Clark? Thank you. At this time, Commissioner Lible, if you don't mind, would you read the
Morning, sir.
proclamation?
Go down and welcome him.
Guess I'm supposed to be at the podium here
Yeah.
or something.
Yes, sir.
Chairman's on his way, sir.
I'm in virgin territory here.
If you could, Mr. Chairman Goddard, if you introduce our guest.
Yeah, I'm Bobby Clark. I'm Ronnie's young brother, the youngest of the bunch. So.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Clark. And
Well, thank you. It's an honor for me to be here, and I'm sure I'd speak for my sister Edith, my brother Clarence, and all the family that's gone ahead, that this is certainly a privilege for me to represent him. I know how much he loved this city and serving in Putnam County and stuff. I actually had some ties here. I actually worked at Angels in '59, and Porter fired me, so I had to go. But primarily, most of my time was spent in Jacksonville. But Ronnie and I loved each other. I was very proud of what he accomplished in his life. I know he's a very generous guy, so the generosity and acknowledgement of this city to his lifelong service in this community just means a lot to me and to the family, so.
Mr. Clark, you sound like him, and your hand motions are just like his. We're glad you're here.
It's a genetic thing, I guess.
Well, it's a great honor I get to present this proclamation on behalf of the board this morning. Thank you for being here. Putnam County Proclamation in remembrance of Ronald E. Ronnie Clark. Whereas the Honorable Ronnie E. Ronnie Clark served as the first Putnam County attorney from August 8th, 1972 until December 31st, 1994, a total of 22 years. And whereas Ronnie Clark was a longtime resident of Putnam County, graduating from Palatka Senior High School in 1956, receiving a scholarship to play football at Florida State University. And whereas he received the Hancock Trophy given to the High School Male Athlete of the Year and later became the sponsor and presenter of the trophy. And whereas Ronnie received his Juris Doctorate in 1964 and began his law practice in a 52-year career in Putnam County. And whereas Ronnie was an accomplished golfer and was introduced into the Hall of Fame at Palatka Men's Golf Association in 1972 and organized the Ronald E. Clark Open to benefit young golfers, raised funds for Cancer Society, and sponsored and played in Pro-Am tournaments at TPC in Jacksonville. And whereas he had a very giving spirit and quietly gave of his time, advice, and earnings, helping others, and will be truly missed by his family, friends, and a grateful community. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of Commissioners of Putnam County, Florida recognizes Ronald E. Ronnie Clark for his faithful, dedicated service and selfless giving to others, done, ordered, and adopted this 12th day of December, 2017. And with that, I offer a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, moves.
Thank you, Ronnie Clark.
You want us to come down? Oh, yeah. Can you get all of that?
Yep, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I know that this is, this is now the fun part. We're going to recognize a couple of employees that want to retire. I can't believe it, but they're wanting to. But, Mr. John Salmons and Yvonne Parrish, if you'd come to the front.
John Salmons.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. It's an absolute honor to be here this morning as the county administrator to, to present these plaques to these two county employees, long-term county employees who've done an outstanding job representing not only you commissioners, but the staff in Putnam County as a whole. I know that the agenda has John Salmons listed first, but my mama raised me better than that, so we're going to let ladies go first. So, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'll go ahead and read the plaque. Ms. Yvonne, would you join me, please? Sure. So it's presented to Yvonne Parrish for over 13 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Putnam County, dated December 29, 2017. Yvonne, personally, just thank you for all you've done for Putnam County for the years, and you are certainly going to be missed. And we'll, hopefully you'll be in touch with us and will not forget us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And secondly, I'd like to present to Mr. John Sammons for over 20, John, would you come forward, sir? For over 21 years of dedicated service to the citizens of Putnam County, December 28, 2017. Again, John, thank you so much for all your dedicated service over the years. You will certainly be a hard one to replace over there. I don't know if we ever will, but thank you so much for all that you've done for Putnam County.
It's been my pleasure.
Get a picture taken. Ron and John, why don't y'all go up front?
That's okay, I don't mind rabbit ears.
Okay, I have one more
And,
piece
well-
of business this morning. And I thought I brought my paper with me, just one second.
Okay.
Isn't that where your assistant hands it to you in a moment of crisis?
Right.
I'm gonna wing it. Oh, she did, I just dropped it somewhere. Anyway, as you know, we do the employee of the quarter every year, and I do need my agenda though. Please forgive me, this is the first opportunity I've had to do this, and I'm excited to do it, but a little nervous at the same time. But as you know, Putnam County does an employee of the quarter every year, and then we follow that up with an employee of the year. This is a very prestigious award for our staff because it's voted on by their peers. So it's, you know, it's not only an honor for us to be able to recognize them today, but it's also an honor for them to know that they were recognized by their peers. So if we have them in the audience today, the first quarter winner for this year was Ms. Lori Parker. Is she here? And then we have Mr. Eddie Bryant received the award in the second quarter, but he's retired, so I don't know if Mr. Bryant is here. We have Charlie Francis for the third quarter and Karen Adams for the fourth quarter.
Yay. The drum roll.
Yeah, again, this is just want to say thank you to each and every one of you because this is recognition by your peers, and it's nothing more gratifying than being recognized by your peers for a job
Right.
well done. So thank you all for all that you do. But unfortunately, as we know, there's only one that can win the Employee of the Year, and again, it's voted on by your peers. And this year, the staff has voted Ms. Lori Parker as the Employee of the Year. Just as a little bit of history for Lori, you know, Lori began her career 28 years ago with Putnam County. She started in all places in sanitation. And she started out as a clerk typist too. I don't even know if we have those titles anymore. It's been that long. But once she was there for about a year, she moved over to the Human Resources Department, which is where she spent the next 27 years of her career. And just recently, she was promoted to the interim HR director. So Lori's been with us for 28 years, doing great service for all the commissioners and all the citizens and all the staff. So once again, I just want to congratulate her on being Employee of the Year. Congratulations, Lori. Lori, on behalf of the county commissioners, we'd like to present you with a plaque as well.
Thank you.
We must have broke child labor laws back then, undoubtedly.
So if we could get a photo with everybody, that would be awesome.
10 or 15.
Her mother worked there too, a long time.
Were you 8 when you started?
Here at the same time.
7. Yes.
Yes, ma'am,
Sure
the
she could work any
expectations has grown.
Okay, we will recess our Porter County Commissioners meeting, and we will begin our Port Authority meeting. So we'll start our Port Authority meeting. Approval of minutes from October 10th, 2017.
Move approval.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Yeah, we have a first and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, anyone against? So moves.
A bit, Mr. Chairman, before you, I hate to interrupt you, but before you move to item B, just for clarification, I received an email yesterday afternoon, late yesterday afternoon, I believe, as well as you did, that the presentation by the Palmer Group was requested to be pulled from the agenda this morning.
Okay, so there is no presentation. I think at this time, what we need to do is move for a workshop sometime in January. I had suggested that on our next meeting, which will be the 9th, perhaps after we have our initial workshop in that afternoon, say 3 o'clock, we have our Port Authority meeting. And that's just a suggestion. That's kind of go with whatever.
On your calendar, is the 9th the second Tuesday or the first?
It's the second Tuesday.
Okay, just making sure. That's
I'm
all.
good with that, Mr. Chairman.
Good to go.
Okay, so is everybody in agreement? Then we will have our workshop on, let's say, 3 o'clock on the 9th.
You want to do a time certain for a workshop? That's it, you're
I
chairman.
just thought we would.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
We're fine.
Okay, then it's all good. We'll move. We will now reconvene our Board of County Commissioners meeting. And now this is our time for public comment. I don't have any cards up here, but if there's anyone from the audience that would like to speak, now is the time. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and we'll move to the consent agenda. Commissioners, does anyone have any? We'll start with Mr. Lible.
I'd like to remove C and N, please.
Commissioner Pickens?
Is 9 on the consent agenda, or is that going to be a separate item?
That's separate.
Okay, that's fine. I have none.
Commissioner Harvey?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, item K for me, please.
Okay, Commissioner Turner has none. With that, so we'll move to item C. Commissioner Lible.
Yes, Mr. Tompkins with us still? Oh, there you are. This is not you yet. This is for,
Wait a minute, it very well might be, okay? The jury's out on that one, okay?
are you in need of service?
If we have another hurricane next year, we may
No,
be.
Mr. Manning, this is for you, primarily.
That was funny.
Oh, here's my notes, excuse me. In the contract, here with, the Mental Health Services Meridian, I noticed that our quarterly payments, we're gonna pay the whole contract in quarterly payments, but if we were to, dissolve this contract, how would the quarterly payments be divvied up? There's no mention of a per diem repayment or anything like that. Is your copy of this contract have any of that kind of language in it?
No, this is really a grant agreement that's done every year. And it really, we're providing the funds for the services they're providing. But yeah, if they get a quarterly payment, it would be, if it were to be terminated
The grant is
after that payment, then
The grant is awarded to Putnam County, isn't it?
No, it's a grant that the county makes to this organization in order, because they do provide these mental health services to the community, and it's a way for this board to assist them in their endeavors in doing that. So it's not basically a services contract between the county and them. It's just a grant, and we provide that, the payments quarterly. So certainly, if you all wanted to, provide those on a monthly, we could suggest revisions to this agreement and do that.
So the origins of the money is from the state, then, I think is what you're telling me. Awarded to the county to award to Meridian.
I'm not sure, I don't
No.
believe so. No.
No.
It's just the
I'm
county
sorry,
granting to the organization
Okay.
in support of their,
Yes. Ms. Papel, you see what I'm getting at? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
this is-
still,
this
it's not
is-
big money, but every penny counts.
This is, since the county does not have a Health and Human Services Department within the county itself, and there are certain Health and Human Services endeavors that counties are expected to provide, in the area of our budget for Health and Human Services, traditionally, and I haven't gotten into the weeds on this, I apologize, but traditionally, we have given this grant to help meet our Health and Human Services expectations in the county, since we don't have our own department. It sits in the same pot of money as where we pay HICRA, where we pay Medicaid. This is where it is in the budget, and the line it has always been paid out of is a grants and aid line, not a vendor type line. So,
Okay, still, what I'm getting at is, if this contract abruptly ends, who's responsible for repayment of that money if we're on a quarterly basis and they were awarded?
this is general fund money. We're
Okay.
not getting this money from the state. This is budgeted general
It's
fund
our
money.
money.
It's
That's
our
what-
money.
All right,
correct.
okay. Well, let's don't let any of it slip. If this does. I don't think this will happen, but this is a moving target, the mental health services, particularly brand-new system we're doing with this Baker Act money, and anything can happen. There's been a lot of movement.
I would say stay tuned. County administration is working on a lot of ideas, and this may come up again and make you feel much better.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at, because it's all brand new, and as y'all know. Okay. All right, then C, Mr. Tompkins, not needing mental health services, will you come to the podium, please?
well, we're not sure about that yet.
Okay, question simple again about money here. The Department of Corrections, particularly the prison in East Palatka, owed us, I guess you would call it gain time, and we're talking prisons here. Don't we have a lot of time owed back to us for rainy days, or just them missing work? I don't know how to phrase it, but.
We, Mr. Suggs and I did meet with the Department of Corrections. I'm going to refer to him on that if he doesn't mind.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, sir. What you're talking about is days missed by the Department of Corrections work squad for various reasons. It could have been a medical call out, could have been a vacation scheduled by staff, sick day by staff, and believe it or not, a cold day. And we met with the Department of Corrections, we met with the warden as well as their business manager. We've had these discussions. We are in the process of maintaining our records to make sure they correspond with their records for the 3 inmate work squads that we have, with the number of days that received those services. So we can go back and revisit this conversation, not only at the local level, but at the legislative level if we need to moving forward. This is one of those contracts that it would not benefit us to not go ahead and accept the contract again this year because of the amount of labor force that we actually receive for the $57,000 that we're paying the Department of Corrections. I think we get somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3.5 to 4 full-time employees for that
It's
cost
a
of that
great deal,
contract.
but it was a staggering amount of days they missed.
Yes. We had that conversation very directly with them. I guess it's probably about 3-4 weeks ago, and let them know that we were going to be monitoring this situation. If we needed to move it up the chain of command, then we would with the Department of Corrections.
Okay. Again, accountability. That's all I'm looking for.
Right, and we do have the inmate supervisors sign in every day at our facility when they come in, so we keep very good records of when they're here and what they're doing. So there was a discrepancy between their records and our records, and that's some of the things they're trying to vet out right now.
Okay. Thank you, Press.
Commissioner
Mr.
Harvey?
Suggs.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tompkins, you referred to three work groups. Is this 3 or just 1?
This is just one contract.
okay.
We pay $57,000 a year per crew. The other 2 contracts are coming due late January, early February. But this one was, we originally had 2 work crews. They were have to add a 3rd work crew. That's why it's kind of out of sequence with the other 2.
Right. Okay.
But we do have 3 full-time work crews.
And along those lines, how many workers, prisoners, if you will, do we get with that one crew? We get a supervisor.
Up to five inmates per crew.
Yeah. So that's a really good deal, $57,000 for 6 people on site working. That's a
Yes.
pretty good deal.
Yeah,
So,
the only thing we pay for is the inmate supervisor himself. The inmate, we don't pay for the inmate
Right.
labor itself.
but we do provide vehicles.
We provide vehicles, we provide equipment, we provide the gas and oil, radio system, everything they need to provide the work. If we did it in-house, we'd have to provide the same type of equipment for in-house personnel.
Sure.
So that's kind of a net gain for us there. But yeah, for what we get out of it, it's a very good deal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Manning?
Just a couple of points. The contract does provide for termination upon 30 days notice for any reason or no reason. So we do have that option if administration's unhappy with the service that's being provided or the level or the amount. And the second point is I did suggest some changes to the contract to try to nail down some minimums that we would get for them and reimbursements for missed days. And that's not something that they were agreeable to without dramatic increases in the cost of the contract. So in the end, administration didn't feel that it was really beneficial to go in that direction.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes, Mr. Tompkins, you had mentioned a few meetings back that you were in negotiation with the sheriff and his department and maybe coming up with a sheriff's work crew perhaps in addition to the ones we're talking about today. How are you coming on that, or has it made any headway?
We're still in negotiation with Sheriff DeLoach on that. And I'm not want to speak for him, but he said his prisoners are in for a very short period of time. They rotate out a good amount. The ones in the state prison are there with yearly, 1 or 2 year sentences. So it's kind of a steadier workforce. But we are still working on those negotiations to see if any possibility that Sheriff could provide an additional work crew to us.
Okay, great, thank you.
And if I'm not mistaken, he's already providing us one at sanitation.
Yes.
Something to watch, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
There's pending legislation coming up in January, too, to increase the amount of time that the county will be responsible for holding prisoners, up to double, like 720 days. So that changes that demographic you just spoke of big time. So we need to watch that. I hope it doesn't happen. It's a big expense on us, but if it becomes an expense, we need to form work crews to get some of these monies back as a county.
Commissioner Harvey?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, along those lines, I was on a conference call with FAC Legislative Committee the other day, last Friday, about that, what Commissioner Liebel's talking about, because it would shift the burden down eventually to the counties. Would have to have sheriff approval, and I even suggested that the Board of County Commissioners would need to have our approval on that too, because at the end of the day, it does fall back on us. So we need to have a voice at that table when that time comes. Right now, there seems to be some reimbursement if that happened from the state, but we all know that reimbursement could go away. And it could be a cost shift from the state back to the local county. So we need to be mindful of that, and Commissioner Lible is correct about that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Anything else there, Commissioner Lible?
I'm good, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I think that's it.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, and Mr. Harvey, you have item K.
Yes, I think I want to talk about this for a minute, and Mr. Tompkins, if you could stay there. This is a wonderful partnership with Clay County and Putnam County to fix possibly Bellamy Road and Sun Garden Road. I know Clay County is looking at some development on their side of the county. Mr. Tompkins, I just want to encourage you that we need to look for development on the north side of that our county too.
Absolutely.
Where we're going to be on the south side of these roads, because I don't mind partnering with them. I think it's a wonderful fit, but we need to reap some benefits from that road also.
And I think we will. In the long run, I think this is a tremendous asset for us to have that road as a paved road. It meets the grant criteria they want of regional development, economic development. So I think this is a tremendous opportunity for both counties to work together and get this thing going.
Well, with that outer spur of that outer beltway, and the drop off at Gustafson Dairy on 17 up there, this is a hop, skip, and a jump to that area. And Mr. Lible, I'm sure, would love any type of development that could take place. And then it takes you over to Barden, it takes you back to Flora Home. It's just a win-win situation for us on this.
And that was my comments in the negotiations. You're going to be at the table more than us, but I would love to see a connector to Barden Road.
Yeah.
On this, we'd have two paved roads. There are a lot of workforce that comes out of Barden, goes to Jacksonville to work, Orange Park.
Well, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about coming from Barden Road, going down Bellamy and Sun Garden to 17,
Right.
which would give us an additional evacuation route also. But
Yes, it
that was
would.
one of the main things that we talked about, was having Barden Road connected to 17. That would spur development on Barden Road in that whole area, that northern part of the county.
Well, Penny Farms has a very large development proposed right now too, and they're going to need those additional evacuation routes too,
Exactly.
which
So
could
it
easily
serves
come.
more than one purpose, so
Yeah.
we're very much aware of that, and we will do our darndest to get development in the county.
I just don't want to be the stepchild. I want to be partners with them. That's my
We were actually taking the lead on this. We asked Clay
That's
County
right.
for their endorsement to come in to help us get the grants.
good. Thank you.
This is our baby.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other comments on item K?
Move approval of consent agenda, Mr. Chair.
We
Second.
have approval and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against also say aye. It moves. And we will now, what I have here is item 9, which is also Public Works. The award of the construction of the Drayton Island Ferry Barge.
I will say on this item, since I'm the one that wrote an additional funding source needs to be identified, that all of the funding questions have been resolved, and Public Works will not need to dip into any other project to pay for this.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Tompkins, if you wouldn't mind, just tell us the progression on this, and then what's going to happen with that ferry, the existing ferry, after the completion of this project.
That's a long question.
Yes, it is.
No, this Drayton Island and Fort Gates Ferry, they're kind of intertwined together, and we've been working on these things for years before I even started. But we got DOT money to build a new barge for Drayton Island. And we went through all the things, and we originally put this out as design build. And it was decided the design build really wasn't the proper venue to get adequate bids on it. So the county hired a naval architect, and we actually designed a barge to meet all of the DOT standards it needs to be for weight, size, width, and length, and draft, and everything else. And we dealt very heavily with our boat captain out there and with our naval architect. So we came up with the design, and that's what we bid out. Unfortunately, the bids came in considerably higher than what we had budgeted. So that's when Ms. Papel and I, and she did majority of the work, sat down and figured out how we could pay for this. But Metal Trades out of South Carolina was the low bid by a considerable amount. They came in, I think, about 174. The next lowest bid locally was 212. Then we had another bid at 240. So that's where we stand with it. But the barge will enable us to carry more heavier equipment, more equipment over to Drayton Island. The existing barge that's there now will be transferred down to Fort Gates, and that barge will be used down there. The terminals on Drayton Island side and the mainland side, are being done solely through DOT. They're in the process of designing that now. We met with their designers a couple of times. They're probably at about 60, 70% plans right now, but that is fully funded by DOT. Barge landings are in the process. The new barge is in the process, so that should all come together. Then we're down taking this barge to Fort Gates. The Fort Gates terminal on the Fort Gates side, our land side, is actually, I think, going out to bid here shortly, so we should have that in progress at the same time everything else is going. So according to our grant, we're supposed to have everything completed by September 30th, 2018, and we feel very confident we will meet all those requirements and have the grant satisfied. I hope that answers your
That took care
question.
of it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Turner.
while I have no problem with what we have before us today, I think that what's gonna happen after that barge is built needs to be workshopped again. Because I think a lot of this has been assumptions, and a lot of this is, I think that the current structure we have, if I'm understanding correctly, is that the insurances are being paid for the Fort Gates ferry by Mr. Hackett, I think his name is. Is that his name,
Right,
Bill?
yeah.
Right,
Okay,
Dick
so, or
Hackett.
Commissioner Pickens?
Yes.
So, if Mr. Hackett's paying the insurance now and he owns the whole operation, if we send our barge down, or our leftover barge that's gonna, go down to Fort Gates after we build a new one for Drayton Island, then what's gonna happen is we're gonna take on liability for the new operation because that barge is gonna belong to us instead of having somebody else do it. And I'm not so sure from the workshops that I've seen so far on the Fort Gates barge, I don't know that we own the land on the sides of it to hook the thing to. So, you know, it's different if we're helping somebody by, basically, if I'm understanding correctly, all we have invested in Fort Gates right now is half of the insurance or something that we helped Mr. Hackett pay. And that's all we have invested, and we're gonna go from that to owning the barge and having the liability, not owning the sides. I mean, there's just a lot of issues here that are coming up that I think need to be resolved before we just automatically send the other barge down to Fort Gates. Or at least that conversation needs to be had. There's just too many items up in the air and too much liability that we're fixing to take on that we didn't have before this happened. So, like I said, while I don't have any problem getting DOT to build a new barge, I think that's where the end of my support today is gonna be, cause I plan on voting for this, but that's the end of it, is gonna be what's on the agenda for today, not all the other things that may or may not take place on the other Fort Gates one.
And I have no problem with us taking that to a workshop. Mr. Manning, I think these are several legal issues that I can't resolve, so I think a workshop probably would be an appropriate venue to take this to.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple. Press, we discussed a little bit yesterday, but what was the amount of, that the ferry will carry now?
It's
over above what the
70,000 pounds.
70,000 pounds?
Right. I think right now they're at about 35 or 40 at most. And a lot of it depends upon water level. But I believe what the new barge we got, and then when the new terminals get built, we should not have any problem at all taking anything across to the island.
Okay, and this ferry will operate with the existing landings until the new ones are,
That is
built.
my understanding. We'll be able to operate on the existing landings until the new ones get built.
thank you.
Any other discussion? Mr. Suggs, I think you have the floor.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Just as a point of clarification, the information contained on your cover sheet for this item, bid in the amount of $178,074, as well as the bid number itself of $178,074 is correct. There was a scrivener's errors on the agenda itself that showed $174,000. Please disregard that. The information contained on your cover sheet is correct for the bid.
Okay.
May I ask another question?
You can, Mr. Turner.
This has been going on quite a while before I showed up, and so I'm trying to understand it a little more fully by asking the question, mainly of Commissioner Pickens, I guess. Was it necessary for them to double the capacity of the current barge that's ran for all these years? I'm just not, I don't know.
From what I understand, that there were, with the existing barge, that you could not carry various pieces of equipment over there. An example, bulldozers and firefighting equipment. And I've also had some complaints from some of the local contractors, mainly well drilling companies, that they were not able to carry their water trucks over there and add equipment to drill the wells that they have requested. Up to like a 4-inch well, they could go and do a small jet well or something like that, but they're not able to carry those types of equipment over there.
And just to add to that, Clay Electric had trouble. They could not carry one of their standard bucket trucks over. The linemen actually had to put on spikes and climb the poles by hand to do the restoration work over there. So we've been very limited on what could be going over there on the existing barge, so that was the necessity to build a new one. And just for information, DOT considers this a bridge, and that's how they're funding it. And actually, if you go down to the terminal, the landings, you'll see there's actually a bridge number painted on the piling down there. So that's how DOT is involved in it. It is classified in the state system as a bridge, and that's how we're getting the money to do it. But you are correct. The original barge right now is very weight restricted in what can go over there when it's needed to. So this will remedy a lot of the problems over there.
I'm aware, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm aware in times past where there's been issues with weight limits on the existing barge, but there's also been other people that you could borrow a barge or rent a barge from that could take stuff over there that was too heavy to put on there. I mean, we've had to do it in my private business when we worked on the island, but it never seemed to be an issue to find somebody that would send a barge over there. That's the only reason I was asking the question. Do you think it's needed enough, and in an emergency situation in order? I mean, this ended up costing us some money, didn't it?
Yes, sir,
More
it
than the DOT. Approximately how much more did it cost?
I'll refer to Ms. Popel for that if I could.
Over the grant, how much did it cost?
The entire grant had a 20% match. That includes terminals, barges, everything. When everything's said and done, the total cost to the county will be something less than $400,000. And that,
DOT?
the
Cost
DOT,
us $400,000?
Part of that is the 20% match for the grant itself.
Okay, I get that, but what we're doing today is 174. Where's
what
the
we're
other
doing today's
205?
gonna cost us somewhere in the vicinity of $80,000.
Right around 70, I believe
Okay,
was the
70.
number.
This slice of it, but it's all BPP money, and it's all already been plugged in.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just because it's BPP money doesn't mean it's county funds. BPP money was designated to pave roads.
Well,
I
this
get
is
it if we're
one
gonna
of their
use
roads.
some of it for
Yeah.
amenities and we're gonna take it here, but I don't know that I understand the answer to your question. How much is it costing the county over and atop whatever the state's paying? There's a dollar figure.
Somewhere between $375,000 and $400,000 for the entire grant,
For us.
which includes the landings, it includes the barges. You'll have to tell them what all it includes.
It includes the Drayton Island landing, includes the Drayton Island barge, and it includes the Fort Gates landing. So there's three components of the grant. The original grant was $2,020,000. DOT has increased that. They've given us several supplements on it. So it's up now around 2.1, 2.2 million for the total grant with those three components. The barge is only one component of it. And that's what we're here today for, is that one singular component of that total grant. And out of that total, the 174, DOT is going to pick up almost 100,000 of it, and the county is going to pay the additional 70,000.
So this grant isn't 178,000 today. It's basically a piece of 2.2 million that's gonna cost the county 400 and something thousand dollars, 400,000. I mean, I know you, generality.
Yeah, in generalities, 400,000 would be a good.
So, okay.
Commissioner Harvey?
Mr. Chairman, along those same lines, so if the grant was $2 million and we have a 20% match, that's a $400,000.
Correct.
That we're dealing with. So we would have to deal with that no matter what at
Yes.
that point.
And a lot of that work's already done. A lot of that exposure is behind us. It just,
Okay, so my question to you is, as the grant has been, additional funds have come in, does that mean our 20% follows those additional?
Yes, sir.
Wow,
Exactly.
okay, all right.
but the additional funds that have come in are like 10 grand and 10 grand. They're not 100 grand
I
and
guess
100
my
grand.
heartburn goes back from day one, then when the commissioners voted on approving a grant for that, you know, they dedicated X amount of dollars based on the 20%. Well, that 20%'s grown exponentially right now. So, because the grant has grown.
Well, it hasn't grown exponentially. What our original grant was 2 million. The next supplement was for $11,900, and the third supplement was for $9,300.
Okay.
So it's only grown by 20 grand.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Any other discussion?
So, just one more thing.
Okay, go ahead, Mr.
Chairman.
Turner.
So have we repaired the two sides of Drayton Island yet, or are there still damages left from the hurricane?
No,
Once we build this barge, can they hook the boat to it and start pushing it?
Yes, sir, they can. We did some repairs on the Drayton Island side about a year ago. We did not have any damages basically from the hurricane. The mainland side is functional too. There's a couple loose timbers, which we're in the process of working with Karen to get those fixed. But those ferry landings are operational. In fact, I was over there a week and a half ago with the DOT design group, going through the whole 9 yards over there with them. Now, I'll be honest with you, the Drayton Island landings were damaged beyond repair. I mean, excuse me, the Fort Gates
Yeah,
landing.
let's keep them separate if we can,
Yes.
because they're two different issues
They are, but
completely.
unfortunately, this grant is all intermingled together, so I've went to a great deal of pains the other day to separate everything out from the three components of the grant to where monies are going, how they've been allocated, and what's been spent, so.
Okay,
but-
so there were monies in the grant for the Fort Gates Ferry too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and what items did that cover?
That covered the terminal, the new landing for Fort Gates. The original grant was $960,000 for Drayton Island, $1,020,000 for Fort Gates, and then $100,000 for the barge, which was an $80,000 DOT, $20,000
So
us.
DOT is looking at Fort Gates also like
Yes.
it's a bridge.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
Mr. Harvey?
one last thing that struck my, so this is for two different, I got it. Does our match with the barge that we currently own at Drayton Island, does that barge count for some of the 20% match? Because that's a county asset.
I don't know the answer to that. I have not explored that.
Okay, all right,
But
I'll
we
let it
would-
go.
we would
but
definitely look
maybe
into
we
that.
can get back with me on that answer.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, now, get back where we were, which was the award of the bid.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we award the bid 1721.
Okay, we have a proper motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. So moves.
Thank you very much.
At this time, Mr. Smith, would you like to make any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank Mr. Suggs and Amanda and the commission for allowing my report to be moved up in the agenda. Generally, the items that deal with land development codes and planning and development public hearings, I have less involvement in those. And in the court setting, we have gone from basically 12 jury selection days a year to next year we're going to have 42. So my time's going to be needed a little more at the courthouse, and this allows me to make a judgment on where I should be without impacting my responsibilities to provide the services that I do for you. So what I wanted to mention today, and most of you probably already know this, but I do want to announce that on December the 5th, we received reimbursement from FEMA for $1,061,000. And I do want to thank this commission, and particularly Commissioner Harvey, who really raised this issue some months ago with the powers to be that were influencing this and have had these resolved. There still is about $150,000 that's still owed. In addition, there is a list of projects that were submitted to FEMA for reimbursement, but those projects have yet to be worked and completed. So those are still projects that need to be resolved sometime moving forward. But just like these, the county has to expend those dollars up front, complete the project, and then apply for reimbursement. And the federal government pays 75%, the state pays 15%, and the county covers 10% of those costs. So, for example, the Veterans Park in East Palatka at the foot of the bridge, that's, I believe, a little bit over $1 million estimate to repair that. So those funds that have to be expended, and then you would get back about 90% of that. So there still are projects that can be worked and are eligible for FEMA reimbursement. But all of these were for debris removal, and so those funds would be then allocated back to the sanitation fund. So that helps currently with the costs that we're going through with the debris removal from Irma. So these were from Matthews. We're still expending dollars on Irma, and at some point, then we will get a reimbursement on those. So it's good news. Thank you once again to the commission for raising this issue with those that could help with that, and to Mr. Suggs. All of you have done a great job, and I thank you for that. And do you have any other items? And with that, that's our report today. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr. Turner?
thank you for your report, Mr. Smith. Exactly how does that impact us? Does that give us, I mean, we had to spend this money in advance, and so I'm assuming that the sanitation department didn't have $1 million laying around they could spend, and so we had to put some in, or did we not?
Fortunately, the sanitation department had been sequestering funds for a construction project, so they spent funds meant for capital and construction on debris removal. This money coming in helps with the cash flow of the money going out for Irma, but we're gonna need to be just as hot and heavy to try and get the Irma money back, just to maintain positive cash flow.
Okay, so basically it did come out of sanitation, out of a
Yes, sir.
fund that they were gonna use for something else that they could use for this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and so I'm assuming we're still using that same fund that they amassed to do that capital project with to help with Irma, and all we did was put $1 million back in it to help repay the capital that's gonna go towards Irma. Okay, I sure hope we don't have another one.
That's exactly right.
From your lips to God's ears.
That's right.
Thank you.
Any other comments? With that, let's have a 3-minute recess. Public Works Resolution for 2017 Uniform Method of Collecting Non-Ad Valorem Special Assessments. You have the floor, Mr. Tompkins.
Again, well, let's bring a chair up here. We do this every year. This is our non-ad valorem property tax that we do to collect the money from the MSBU's we have in the county. It's a standard proclamation we do every year, this time of year, to allow the clerk to, or the tax collector to be able to collect the non-ad valorem taxes for the MSBU's.
Commissioner Lible? Had a comment.
How about Commissioner Lible?
Excuse me. Commissioner Harvey.
Getting us confused down there?
Yes, that's
Thank you,
shameful.
Mr. Chairman. I kind of do this every year.
Yes, sir.
Just for the benefit of the public, to make sure that they know that we're not creating any new assessments
No, sir.
without it coming before the board. So these are just the standard assessments that are taking place currently. Any new things will have to come before the Board of County Commissioners.
Absolutely. These are the same assessments that have been done for all the MSBU's. There's no increase in any assessments. You're entirely correct. Any change in assessment has a very rigorous process we have to go through to hold public meetings and to go through a lot of advertisements before it would even come to the board to request an increase. So these assessments are exactly what they are today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any comments?
Got to open up for public this week.
Okay. 4. Anyone in the public want to speak for or against this? Seeing none, we'll close that. We'll move to,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
yes, sir.
that we move forward 2017 uniform method of collecting non-ad valorem special assessments.
And I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a proper first and a proper second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And is open for discussion?
That we already,
I'm sorry,
Passed
missed it. Obviously, we passed our discussion,
yep.
so moves. Okay, next would be item B. Yes, sir, go ahead.
You ask for the nays?
All those not in favor, use the same sign. Seeing none, it so moves.
Thank you.
Let's move to B.
You do
Which
need a
is-
chair up here.
Fertilizer ordinance.
Yes, sir. What the request is that, as you well know, we're under a mandate from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, what's called the BMAP, which we have to meet certain nitrogen, phosphorus reductions to the St. Johns River. This BMAP been in existence since October 2008, and the counties have been working on this very diligently. And what DEP came up and said, to mimic the state requirements, that if the counties would pass the fertilizer ordinance, which basically mimics the state requirement of what fertilizers can contain and what the local stores can sell, that we would get credits towards our BMAP requirements. And this particular ordinance, and also the next one, garners about 400 pounds of nitrogen removal towards our BMAP requirement. And this, like I said, it's already following the state statute anyway, and so we're getting some pretty good return for having this ordinance on our books. Home Depot and all the other stores around are still selling the fertilizer that meets this requirement. So that's what we're asking today, is to have this ordinance put on our books so we can actually get credit for things that we're already doing.
Okay.
If I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Commissioner
I'd
Lible.
like just to extend the comments from Mr. Tompkins that I think that it would behoove this board and it would show great leadership in the region. We pride our river. We're one of the only communities with a community on both sides of the river, east and west. And we follow the toxic algae blooms that are up and down the river in different communities that are much more dense than ours. And to avoid this problem as we develop, this is a big measure. I'd like to bring out the point that this does not cover commercial farming.
Right.
You know, they're regulated by the state on their own. This is just a good measure. We're not depriving anybody of fertilizer. Like Mr. Tompkins says, this is in stock at all of the different stores that supply fertilizer. But it's great leadership, and it shows that we do love our river, and we'll keep it clean for our recreational purposes, and all the effort that we're putting into nature-based tourism, it only enhances that effort. So anyhow, I would ask for your support, and I probably have it already, but I feel compelled to share this with you. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I? Thank you. Also, I want to piggyback on something you said, Mr. Tompkins. The local stores are selling the product anyway. I was online a few weeks ago looking at the fertilizer that my yard requires for winterizing, and it called for a higher nitrogen level. Well, I went out looking for it, and they don't have it. And actually, it was a good thing because, as Commissioner Lible said, I live on water, and I didn't want to put nitrogen in my water, if you will. So a lower nitrogen, my grass will do just fine. It'll get used to what it needs to get used to, but we don't need to pollute our water. So I applaud you, Mr.
Thank you,
Lible.
Commissioner Harvey.
Yeah, we all need to be mindful of that. And the farms are already doing best practices. They're doing their thing, which is far greater than this. So I support this too, and I think it's a wonderful move for Putnam County.
Excellent. Any other comments on the board? Any comments from the public for or against this ordinance? Seeing none, we'll close that portion and we'll move to.
I move approval of staff recommendations, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Well, we have a proper first, proper second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those against, same sign. Seeing none, so moves.
Thank you, colleagues.
Okay, we'll now move to pet waste ordinance, again with Mr. Tompkins.
Hopefully this is my last one today, but here again, it's along the same lines. These are DEP state requirements. These are the ordinances that the state had passed down to us and asked us to enact. We also get credit on our BMAP again. We get another 400 pounds of nitrogen removal by having this ordinance on our books. It is not intended for the homeowner with his dog or pet on his own property. It's not intended for the farmer that's got 200 acres out there. It's intended to common areas, road rights of way, are areas that are open to the public that people would do the right thing and pick up after their pet. And that's basically what this ordinance says, is that we would have this on the books to be able to do that people would go and pick up after their pets in public areas. We're not talking about on private property whatsoever. It's not any infringement on the farming community or on, taking your dog out in your own backyard. But like I said, we do get credit towards our BMAP, which is a tremendous asset to us right now. These BMAPs are, like I said, we've been working on this since really before in 2008 was enacted. So it's been many years we've been working on this to reduce the algae blooms in the river and keep our rivers healthy. So this is just another step, another tool in the toolbox to help us meet that requirement.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Turner.
When this went to workshop, I was opposed to it then. I spoke against it. And I gave it the benefit of the doubt, so I went and read it again. And then I didn't believe what I read, so I read it a third time. And I still came up with the same interpretation. It may be your intent for this ordinance to be only in common spaces, but that isn't what it says. If you want me to, I can dig out the exact phrasing if you'd like, but it's not what it says. It basically, what this is gonna turn into is not what it's intended to be. it's gonna turn into, if I'm mad at you and you're my neighbor, all I've got to do is take a picture of your dog using your yard for waste or your domesticated animal for waste, and I can call code enforcement. And if code enforcement can find that waste, then they can write $100 fine, because the fine is also laid out in this what it could be. Now, I went along with the fertilizer ordinance, no problem. I think that's a great idea, because it's accomplishing what we're trying to do. It's actually accomplishing not letting nitrogen into the waterways. I get that. I don't see where my domesticated animal uses for his waste is gonna help the river in a lot of different ways, or help something. The only thing I see about the way this is worded is, like I said earlier, if my neighbor is mad at me, all they got to do is call code enforcement, and I've got $100 fine. Now, I'm not gonna vote for this. What the other commissioners may vote for is up to them. But I'm telling you right now, I cannot vote for something that I feel like is nothing but just something to fight over in code enforcement, and gets very little done other than pick a fight.
Mr. Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree with Commissioner Turner. In the workshop, I was finding this almost hilarious that we were going to try to pass an ordinance that there was no way we were going to be able to enforce. Plus, we have a active hunting area here where they use dogs, and believe me, those hunters are not going to follow behind those dogs. And I find that this is too burdensome. And again, as a conservative, I'm not wanting to pass an ordinance that there's no sense of enforcing, period. So I stand against this.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Pickens.
I actually voted to move this forward, to research it a little more. And when I was discussing with press on a number of agenda items yesterday, I told him I wasn't really where I was on this. But I agree with the other two commissioners. I believe that this will be problematic as we move forward if we were to approve this. So.
I think it needs further scrutiny also, and you know that I am pro waterway, lake, and river, but this is too vague. Mr. Tompkins, we do have a big sporting hunting community, and they're right. We have to tailor and customize one to fit our community. I'm for it, but not in this language.
Mr. Chair, if it
Yes,
may
sir.
be
Go
agreeable
ahead.
to the board, maybe we could table this item, and I could get with Mr.
Absolutely.
Manning, and maybe we can look at the language and kind of tailor the language more to Putnam County than what the overall state language is. And I have no problem if we would table it today and possibly bring it back late January to another workshop and have revised language in it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Personally, I've talked about this issue just about as much as I want to. I don't think that whatever you do is gonna make it any more palatable or any better, because in order to pass the muster and get the DEP credits, we have to make it wide ranging, and we can't just say if it's in common spaces or if it's right next to the road in between on the county's right of way, or if you do that, excuse me, it would be the same as saying that you can only do the fertilizer ordinance in certain areas, where instead of just anywhere where there's water, which would have taken all the teeth out of it and made it worth nothing. So personally, I don't think we need to talk about this anymore. I don't really need to workshop it unless Mr. Tompkins can tell us that it is an absolutely significant amount of credits that we're gonna get. I mean, significant in the overall thing. Then personally, I've talked about the pet waste ordinance enough.
I concur.
If I may answer that question to Commissioner Turner, the monetary value we get on this is about $25,000 a year in perpetuity. These B-maps do not sunset. They're here forever. So this is approximately about $25,000 a year that we're going to be forgiving. We're not going to get that credit. And it does go towards our BMAP requirement. So that's the only thing I can tell you. I don't know how we can determine if that's significant or not, but it is worth about $25,000 a year.
Okay. Just a second. Commissioner Lible?
Mr. Harvey was first.
Okay.
He had his hand up, you didn't see.
Mr. Tompkins, but there's other ways to get those credits, and we can.
Oh, absolutely.
We can
There's other
expand
ways.
other areas that we're currently doing now, and we can receive more credits. So it's not like we're gonna give it up. We just need to make it up in other areas.
We will make it up in other areas,
Right.
and rather than receiving 25,000 in credit, we're gonna have to spend $25,000 to get those same credits.
Well, not necessarily. We're fixing to take off the septic tanks off the river down there. That's gonna give us BMAP credits.
Yes.
So there's things that we've already done, this board has done.
I agree with you. There are things we
proactively
are
that-
doing to
Right.
meet our
So
BMAP requirement.
I don't want the public to think we're giving up 25,000. That's not the case.
While $25,000 is an awful lot of money, it's not enough for me to hear the first guy that comes in and gets, code enforcement fined $100 because his domesticated animal put his waste in the wrong spot. So I realize it's a lot of money, and I'm not trying to trivialize that, but do we really want to put something that intense on our books?
Commissioner Lible?
I think that the $25,000 is real. I don't want to differ from you, Mr. Harvey, but it is real. And I am not as afraid of a workshop conversation that would discuss the minimum requirement to abide by this law, this request. And what's the word I'm looking for? Compliance. What's the minimum compliance? If you could bring that to a workshop, I would ask my colleagues, if we could just, not in a long, drawn-out deal, Mr. Turner, you make a lot of sense. But if we can net $25,000 on a minimal effort to get in compliance with this, let's at least look at it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, if we're gonna do this, then I would like Public Works to bring to me a spreadsheet showing exactly where the
That's fine.
25,000's coming from, and not just throw out a number.
That's fair enough.
But I'm gonna tell you right now, if y'all wanna spend time on this, fine, I'll spend time with you, but I think it's ridiculous. And, but that's fine, I'll spend time with you, it'll be no problem whatsoever, but
Mr. Turner, I know exactly how you feel. You just told me. But if you would please, let's just look if we can possibly pull this off.
Now, make sure that we don't have an understanding here. You're wanting to table this and rewrite this.
What we would do, I'll get with Mr. Manning, we'll look at the legal side, we'll rewrite the ordinance. I will run it by DEP to make sure that they will approve it and conform to their standards. And if we can get that done, then we'll bring it back to the board in the workshop.
Mr. Chairman, I think we need to take anything out of there that there's any illusion or whatsoever that if your dog is on your property and does whatever, then he is not in trouble, that you're not in trouble. And that you can't be fined $100 because your poodle goes out in your front yard. So, I'll fight this one all the way to the end because it's just not right for you to not allow somebody to use their own yard for their own domesticated animal to go use.
I agree with you 100%. I do the same thing. That's where our dog goes, so.
And I think you also had mentioned that rental property such as a hunting club where they've rented or paid their dues. Mr. Manning, do you have any comments?
Yeah,
on
I
this?
just want to clarify that the way the ordinance currently is written, it does not apply to property that the pet owner owns or possesses. Okay, so that would include rental, that would include a license to be on a hunting property. It would not include your neighbor's property.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's an item for interpretation, because like I said, I read it twice, and it could be interpreted both ways. So here in this meeting today, we're saying that it's not, but it could also be interpreted by just changing. So I also would like to see an exclusion in there for any hunting dog. We did another ordinance a while back where we actually excluded hunting dogs, working dogs, those type of dogs. Why couldn't we add that in there if we're gonna bring it back anyhow, where all those dogs are excluded?
We will look at that, and Mr. Manning and I will craft a new ordinance and bring it back to the workshop.
I would want to know ahead of time what DEP's minimum requirements are before we spend time doing that.
We will do that. We will get with DEP.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Harvey?
one last thing. $25,000 is very important to this commissioner, but my point is this, and I go along with Commissioner Turner on this. Bring us a spreadsheet that shows, because we're currently not getting it now, and we're going to get more credits by doing the St. Johns River Water Management Grant. So we've got big stuff coming down the road. Let's not take our eyes off the prize. The prize is the big stuff. This is a little thing. Thank you. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
If
sir,
I could,
Mr.
I'd
Rob.
like to offer a motion to table this item into a future workshop where more materials will be presented. Thank you.
Okay.
I think the point of order was withdrawn, though, wasn't it?
With the table, do we need
It was
to?
withdrawn.
Withdrawal tabling.
Mr. Tompkins.
I think you can handle it either way. I mean, it really is.
I heard table.
One way or another. Certainly, if he's wanting it, he asked that it be tabled. Certainly,
Asked
a
it to be
motion to
withdrawn.
table it is fine.
I'll change my wording to withdraw with a remaining future date for discussion and new information presented at that time.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so we have a proper motion for withdrawal. Do we have a second?
I don't know it needs that.
It
If he
doesn't need it.
withdraws, it doesn't need
Okay.
a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Then it so moves.
The only thing I ask, please, is if, when you go back and look at, from DEP, and you go back and do all that, don't bring something back that's like this again that's gonna just cause problems.
No, sir, I agree. We will make sure it doesn't cause you any
Chairman.
heartburn on this.
If I could,
Yes, sir,
counsel-
Mr. Lible.
If I could address council. Mr. Manning, do we need a motion or just simple withdrawal?
You don't need it. I mean, if he's withdrawing it, he's withdrawing it. You certainly can make a motion.
Okay, all right. Will do. With Mr. Suggs bringing it back to a workshop at a later date.
Okay, all right. So
Okay.
there is just no need for a motion. We can
I am,
close.
I'm good to go, Mr.
We'll
Chairman.
close on item
Sorry.
C.
Thank you.
And now we'll open with item D, which is legal.
Commissioners, this item is one that we've discussed previously in these board chambers. This is a change to the boating restricted area ordinance. It was advertised for prior public hearing at that point. You requested that it be moved to a workshop. It was discussed then at a later workshop. And what you have before you today is a revision to the ordinance based upon the direction given at that workshop. The revised ordinance, I've added a reference to hazardous debris floating in the waterways, often submerged, as a hazard. And we've also expanded upon the areas where the no-wake zones would be in effect. The area in Dunn's Creek was expanded both directions. And we added the area within the St. Johns River in the Willaca area between channel marker 49 and channel marker 46. If you all approve this ordinance today, it would then need to go to the state, as we discussed at length, for their approval in both areas. And for part of the area in the Willaca area, an interesting fact, the town of Willaca, when it was incorporated by the state legislature way back when, they actually, the state, gave control of the St. Johns River to, I believe it was the center of the channel, I'd have to double check that, but to the town of Willaca in those areas where it abuts the original town limits. So to the extent some of these areas fall within the town of Willaca's jurisdiction, we'd need their authorization as well.
Interesting.
Okay. have any comments on
Yes, I
this?
do. So, Mr. Manning, with your last statement that we need the jurisdiction of WILACA to ratify this, what do we do?
Once.
2 steps?
Go ahead and pass it, and then and then I'd send it down to them to have on their agenda as to whether or not they would ratify it, approve it. Same as we would do with the state, and it would not be effective until approved by both in those areas where both would need to approve, and just the state in the areas where the state would need to approve.
I'd like to bring up the fact, too, that the premises of this ordinance is the overflow of septic tank systems. But if, in the case of Dunn's Creek, we have infrastructure coming that will relieve that, what does it do to this ordinance then? The premises changes, we won't have that problem, and we still have the non-standard bulkhead problems, and there's no language concerning that. I mean, I'm a little concerned with that.
It is what it is. I mean, that's the basis for it. If there's additional bases you'd like to have in here, we can certainly make those changes, but this is all the direction I've been given.
Well, I think that the problem, the lack of building codes pre-1992 has probably created much of this, but at some point, we got to start somewhere as a community to rectify the problem. I mean, we have substandard bulkheads all through that creek area, and we're only going to see more use in the creek area. So I would have liked language in there around that, because this ordinance has lacked teeth, or, you know, it's been problematic. And I thought that, you know, the real problem is the bulkheads. You know,
Well, and this ordinance isn't designed to address bulkheads, so that would certainly be a land development issue and building code issues. If you wanted to have requirements for bulkheads, that's a completely different
Mr.
subject.
Powell with us today?
Yes.
Mr. Powell, come on down. Just like to get your opinion. You have many years, maybe, experience in this in the Black Creek area. Tell us what you feel.
On Black Creek?
Well, here, how does it
here.
apply?
Yeah.
No, not Black Creek.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Black Creek's here, but they've
that's a
had the same
flooding
problem.
nightmare. All along Dunn's Creek, we had a lot of flooding issues. And it's more than just bulkheads. It's a lot of things that were.
Get in that microphone if you.
It was a lot of things put in back in the 80s that are too low. But it's all in a flood zone. So a lot of the bulkheads are failing that you see down there. There's no tiebacks on them or anything. So there are issues there. In a lot of areas, not just Dunn's Creek area itself.
How will we best address it as a community without implementing speed zones is where I'm going with this, if y'all had figured it out. We're known for our wide open blue ways and the ability to run a boat at high speeds, and I think that has merit when it comes to tourism and many other things we experience, our bass tournaments.
As a lot of the properties are being changed out, they're meeting the new flood requirements that are taking them out of the hazard. Yet you do have site-built houses that are below, that are repetitive loss homes. FEMA would like to see them go away.
Mr. Chairman, whenever Commissioner Lible and them are done, I'd like a.
Okay. Go ahead, Kevin.
So there are properties as they replace them, they are coming out of the flood hazard area or being raised above. So that reduces that. But like I said, the site-built structures that are there that are repetitive losses, really not a whole lot we can do except try to mitigate them, get with FEMA and get them raised out or taken out completely.
Mr. Powell, have you ever seen a program that rectified a problem like this with funding from the state or the federal government?
There's a well, not a matching grant, but it's a 75-25 grant for raising homes out of the flood hazard area.
Thank you.
FEMA will pay 75% of the cost of doing that.
I'm good, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Powell.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes, thank you. Let's not let this get redirected from what we started here. What we started here was to try to come up with an ordinance that would help people that lived in these low-lying areas only at time of flooded high tides. So I realize none of us want full-time speed limits on the river. I get it. But when the thing floods, only when it floods is what this says. So I haven't changed my support from it one little bit, because every issue that Mr. Lible and the building official came up with, I guess planning director and building official, came up with, are issues that are valid, but they have nothing to do with what we're trying to accomplish here today. If we could wave a magic wand and make all these houses be 3 foot taller or do whatever, or if we had a state grant or a federal grant that we could get to come in here, we can still address that. It's no problem whatsoever. But I feel we owe this to the people that live in those low-lying areas to try and help them some during the high water floods.
And Mr. Turner, I agree with you, but the problem still exists, and if we start somewhere, sometime, we might be able to overcome this and enhance our tourism industry at the same time, or maintain it. That's all.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I think
I'm gonna go
Mr.
first.
Hopkins was first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I agree with Commissioner Turner, is that, yeah, these will definitely be temporary, only at over the flood level. But I do believe we owe it to our citizens to try to do something to alleviate their issue of water coming into their house because of a boat on a plane. So they will be temporary, because I'm definitely not for permanent no-wake zones on the river. And to legal counsel, if the town of Willaca chooses not to adopt this, can this move forward with the Dunn's Creek ordinance, and it just dies in the Willaca area?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be enforceable in the Willaca area. Just like, as I said, until the state approves it, it wouldn't be enforceable in Dunn's Creek either.
Okay, but if Willaca does not agree with this, then that portion of this ordinance would not go to the state, is that correct?
Well, the whole thing would get sent to the state. The state still has jurisdiction on the other side of the river in the Willaca area. So it's only.
Yeah, it doesn't do any good on the other side of the river, so.
Yeah, I mean, a wake on one side's a wake on the other side.
Yeah.
You know, a wave moves until something stops it.
Okay,
Commissioner Lible? Commissioner.
I'm done,
Pickens,
thank you.
Finished? Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manning? I was thinking the same lines along Commissioner Pickens' thinking, could we make, under our summary highlights where we have A and then we have all this narrative here, but could we make a B and carve out just that part of the river for the city of Willaca? And if they don't ratify it, then that B just falls off, but the A continues on? I know you're,
Well,
I mean, because I don't want them to say, no, this whole thing's dead because we don't agree with
well,
that.
it's just unenforceable as to the portion that they don't approve.
Right,
It's still enforceable.
okay, all right. Well,
But
I think-
again, I mean, I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah, I know.
mean, we can have a totally separate.
No, this is fine. I think this is a great start, though, and it's badly needed, it's been needed, that we did have one on the books, and now it's our responsibility as commissioners to fight for the citizens of Putnam County and to get the legislators and the proper agencies to sign off on this. So I fully support this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any comments?
Mr. Chair, just as a point of clarification, just so we don't get lost in the shuffle here under your summary page, under paragraph A, we've had a lot of conversations here this morning regarding the septic systems, and if everything does go well for this commission, we will certainly be able to get those folks off those septic systems in the near future. But there's also a second part of that sentence, and it deals with the hazardous debris that's floating in the waterway. I just don't want that to get lost in the discussion this morning, because that is, also related to the issue of the no-wake zone when we talk about a temporary enforcement.
All right,
Comment.
at this point, we'll open up for public comment. All those, anyone wanting to speak for or against this ordinance? Seeing none, we'll close that, and we'll open for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we move this ordinance forward.
Second?
We have proper first, proper second. We have
Further
open for discussion.
I would like to have some, thank you. I don't think I can support this ordinance today for the reasons it was obvious. The environmental will eventually be overcome with infrastructure, but I don't think this ordinance goes far enough to alleviate the problem of wake. I think it will temporarily, it will work, and I know it'll pass, and it should, for temporary relief. But I would like to see, I'm a little worrisome too about the agencies Mr. Harvey just mentioned, and losing local control. When you do that, when we get the state involved, we will lose. It is sovereign water, I agree, but right now we have control. And I don't think we've put enough into this at all, so I will not be supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I call for the question. That means I call the vote.
Call for the vote.
And that requires a separate vote,
requires a-
supermajority.
Okay, call for Tony.
District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Nay.
District 3,
This is for the call of the question.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, you have to
Missed
vote
that
on the
somewhere.
question first.
it's fine.
Continue.
District 3,
Yay.
District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
Okay.
And you ask me again, because I'll give you a yay for that. Now, let's go on.
Yes, that is to end discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
and
you got to
vote.
get in that microphone.
That
Get
ain't-
bold and proud, come on.
That ends the discussion.
All right, so that ends our discussion. Now, let's go for the vote.
Right.
Okay. We have a motion on the vote,
We have a
correct?
motion and a second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, also say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I request a 3-minute recess for just a moment?
You can. Let's
Thank you,
have a
sir.
3-minute recess. All right. Coming up next will be Mr. John. Are you going to represent? This is going to be your last representation?
Be
Okay, Mr. Salmons will be heading this up. This is a fine reduction request.
The first case is 2009-0226, 118 Sportsman Road, Satsuma, Thomas and Ramona Palu. Hope I said that right. This is a case where they purchased this property on tax deed sale. The type of violation was unsafe mobile home. Length of time to achieve compliance was 3 years, 6 months. County actually abated the property on this property. I don't have any pictures of this one because pictures are in a spot where I can't copy them. So length of time that the new owners own it of 13 months. Staff is recommending that the board accept $2,902 in lieu of the $56,600 daily fine and $1,850 abatement lien. Obviously, most of that's the abatement lien. It's paid within 180 days. The owners are here.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
I keep asking this. Are we looking at 2902 and 1850? Because the way it's written, it sounds like we're looking at both of those numbers.
We're 2902 is the total.
And that includes the 1850 abatement fee.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the hard cost we have in it plus
correct.
the other cost of mailings. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any comments?
The owners are here, they,
Okay, yes, if the owners would come forward and state your name.
Ramona Palou.
Thomas Palou.
Pull the mic a little closer.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. The property in question, we didn't purchase on a tax deed sale. There were several properties in that surrounding area that a private lender had come to us and asked if we could take them over because the person that he had lent the money to, they were foreclosing on. So to help that person out, we did that, but we took on probably a little bit more than what we anticipated. The first property, right after we purchased this, again, it was a package deal, it wasn't a tax deed sale. We had gotten a letter from code enforcement, which was a property on Horse Landing, and we immediately rectified all that. It took us a little bit of time, but we did get that one rectified. There was a couple other ones that we did get rectified. These two properties in question that we're talking about today, I never received anything from code enforcement, and I didn't even know these fines were on here until a couple of months ago. When we came down here a few months ago, they showed that all of the papers that had been sent to us, the mail person had sent back to the county. So I don't know why they did that, because I've always gotten everything on any of the other properties I had. I've always gotten the letters. So I guess with all of that being said, what I'm asking is, I did ask for a reduction. I don't know if there's any leeway for any other reduction in there or not, because I really never did receive any of the papers. I did know that the one on 713 San Mateo, that particular property I thought we had under compliance. We had gone to start working on that property to find that it had burnt. Somebody had burnt it. And when we got there, I had seen code enforcement had a paper posted to a tree there. So at that point, that's when we kind of started working with that one. We got that one under compliance, but I didn't realize that we still had, money owed on that. So I guess what I'm asking is if there's any room for any leeway other than what we've already come up with, it would be greatly appreciated. I do want to get the fines paid and be done with this.
Okay. Have any comments?
Do we have your correct address?
It was a P.O. box, and that is our correct address. And I can show, I had one on 223 Horse Landing Road that was under the same situation, and I've got all of those papers. So that's why I don't understand why the post office was sending them back to you guys.
I think
have
I
no idea.
attached a letter representing what they're talking about, where the post office just said they didn't know it or something and sent it back to us.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Sammons, this property is all cleaned up now, abated. It's not the eyesore that it used to be, is that correct?
That's correct. It's, they're hoping to sell them, so they want to get them back into a situation where they're paying taxes again.
So they didn't buy them at tax deed, they were trying to help
I
out
thought
in
they
it?
had, but they bought them a different way.
Yeah, you
It
bought
was
them?
a private lender that had, I believe there was 5 properties here, and the gentleman he had lent the money to had come ill, and he was going into foreclosure. So they
Right.
came to us and asked, would you take over this project? So we did, but when we did, it was during the hard times.
Sure.
We're into real estate, and again, when we did this, it was probably just a little bit more than what we could handle, and, but we tried to bring each one into compliance. It's just I didn't know that I had fines on the 118 Sportsman.
Okay, now there was, just so I understand, we didn't put a notice out there on the property, Mr. Simons?
Yes, we post the property.
And if there was, it's one of the properties that we've never got to, and we live in Palm Coast, and it's just been a property that's been on my side burner. So if there was one posted there, I didn't know that there was, because I don't visit that property.
Okay, so the paperwork just somehow missed you.
Well, the letters that were sent to us never got to us through certified mail, because the post office sent them back to Putnam County. And I know when we came down here a few months ago, the lady had showed us all of the letters that had come back. You guys mailed them out, but they were returned, not from us not picking them up. It was stamped on there that the PO, the Postal Service sent them back.
Okay, yeah, we had a notice in here. Okay. Gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman, I'm feeling very Christmassy at this point, and I would like to make a motion that we help these people out who are trying to do the right thing. They tried to do the right thing. The hard cost we have is $1,850 on the abatement lien, and I'd like to make a motion that we reduce the fee to $1,850 if paid within 180 days.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, well, we have a first and a second. We have open for discussion.
I'm good.
Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those against, same sign. So moves. So let's move, while you're standing there, let's move right on into.
Second case is the one she's already talked about a little bit at 713 San Mateo Road. This mobile home that's on the picture right now was obviously burnt by fire. They did tear it down, but the fine had accumulated to like $8,000. Our costs on this particular one are $785, and we've recommended that the fine be reduced to the $785 if it's paid within 60 days, or if you want to combine it with the 180-day on the other one, that's fine too.
Okay, yeah, you've already explained the situation. So in this case, I'll open it up for discussion. Any questions to be had? None? All right, then let's move.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Mr. Selman. How much of this is the hard, I'm trying to figure it out, but the hard dollar fine on this was $8,043.50?
No, that's the daily fine. The hard
I
cost,
understand.
if there's a sheet on the back of the thing that's kind of blue and different color.
What I was
that-
looking for, do y'all have that? And I just
don't have it.
No.
think I have that.
I don't have it either, Mr. Chairman.
It's not included, John.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not on
But
there.
the worksheet that I thought was in there basically takes the cost of the certified letters, the inspections, the special magistrate hearing, and the administrative fine that he typically assesses. All that's included in that thing, and that turned out to be $785.
Okay, Commissioner Harvey?
Chairman, I guess we need to ask for public comment before you get a motion.
There's not
Com-
public comment.
I have-
No, this isn't public
I do
hearing.
have one more question.
Yes,
This home, you came to it and you found out that someone had set it on fire.
we had no idea it had burned.
Then-
I think it had been burnt for several months before we even knew that it was burnt, but we had taken that project. We knew we were gonna go start working on it when we got there. The home was burnt, and there was a posting on it, on the tree.
So you cleaned this one up
That one
yourself?
we cleaned up, yes.
Well, thank you very much. That's the only question I have, sir. Thank you.
Okay. With that,
You ready for a motion?
we are ready for a motion.
I move staff recommendation, $785 if it paid within the allotted time,
60 days.
60 days.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a proper first, a proper second. We'll open for discussion. Seeing none, we'll move for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign.
Good.
So
Thank you.
moves.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Are we
what
able
you-
to go over to pay them now, or do we have to wait for,
Oh, they'll take a check right now.
so?
Yeah, he'll walk right out with you and get
The
that
young
money.
lady in the red coat shirt there, she'll go back with you and
She will escort you.
Yes,
Thank you guys.
confirm that they did this.
thank you, and Merry Christmas.
Thank you very much. Yeah. We were
Okay.
kind of caught off guard. No one really wants to pay the same day they're here. But we appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Salmons, you're going to handle this one also, correct?
The last case is 2012-0065, 200 Sunglow, Satsuma. It's a mobile home that had many issues to it. This one was bought on tax deed sale by Latest Dirt LLC. Ken Schwing is the, whatever you want to call him, for that particular LLC. There was an overbid on this property of $3,000. If you do the fine reduction stuff that was, and the actual costs were $895, which is significantly less than the $3,000 overbid which the county got. So we're recommending that the fine be reduced to what the overbid was, and it'll be done.
Okay.
He has put, as you can see, he's put a new mobile home on the property.
Well, is there anyone here to speak for LLC?
I think he is out of state.
Okay, we'll open for discussion.
I'll move staff recommendations, Mr. Chair.
Second.
We have first, we have a second. We'll also open again for discussion. Seeing none, we'll move for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. So moves.
Before I go, at the last meeting, Terry brought up when there was discussions of foreclosures and stuff, and the fact that there's lots of these derelict mobile homes. Back in probably 2002 or so, the commission at that time, I brought forth this concept that you guys started giving us about $25,000 a year to do abatements of a lot of these derelict mobile homes. We can do 3, maybe at most 5 with that if we're lucky. And I talked to them about the public-private partnership. A lot of these people that buy tax deed sales are reluctant to buy ours if we have a codes case on them, because they don't want to get stuck paying the fine. And at that time, we talked about if they buy the codes case, demolish the structure or whatever, and clean up the property, that we would basically reduce the fine to 0. Back then, the board thought that was a good idea, so we did that for a while, and then at some point, it changed back to where we were charging the actual cost. So that might be something when you talk about that to consider. Also, Brian said that we had only foreclosed on one property, but back in the early 2000s, before Brian, I did foreclose on several properties, but I was particular about which ones I foreclosed on. I foreclosed on some that were on the river, and some other properties, a couple commercial properties that I knew that were going to be either the property owner would pony up the fine at the courthouse steps, so we would get our money, or somebody else would buy them, and it worked pretty well. And then, of course, in 2006, the real estate market went into the dumpers here, and we kind of got away from it. And it also took a lot of time, and we had Russ did one for us, the former county attorney, and he said it was too much time for him to deal with. So we hired an attorney through the bid process, and he was doing them for us, and then he filed a lawsuit against the county, so Rick said we couldn't use him anymore. So,
Yeah.
And then we never found another attorney that did that. But if you pick and choose properties, like we had one, which I know Larry and Chip know, because it was one of them that had the boat sunk on Sanjan.
Right.
And I told Brian that we should foreclose on that property because we would get our money back off of that, but he never did. But that's something that if you are particular about which properties you foreclose on, you can get some money out of it. And I just want to say, the final thing is, I've enjoyed working with you guys. I came here in '96. I've met thousands of really wonderful people in this county, and I'm glad I live here, and I've enjoyed my time here.
Thank
I have a final question for you, Mr. Sammons.
Yes, sir.
How many code cases have you worked in your career?
Oh, God. I don't know. Lots of them.
A lot of people don't know you did this in a former career in Michigan.
Yes.
Is that correct? So you have, how many years there?
I had 20 years doing both planning and code enforcement. It was about equal there. And it was funny because Lansing was doing the same thing you guys are doing. They were trying to attract business. And their chamber did a thing to see how many, what the county's thought of what the businesses thought of the community. And one of the things they all said is you don't have strong enough code enforcement. So the city made a big effort to change that. And if you go to Lansing today, it's just dramatically different. There's just all sorts of business there.
Well, I'd just like to say, John, I've told some of my colleagues over the years observing you, I've been here 11 years, and just your ability to adapt. We've sent you to so many different departments. You've done animal control, code enforcement, all the hard stuff.
Yep.
You know, you really have. And you did it with grace and style and fairness. You really did. You were very good. And I learned a lot from you, from my career, how to deal with people. I watched you way more than you think. And because you're very
It's
good.
my philosophy to treat people the way I'd want to be treated in a similar situation.
Well, this worked for you, and I'm going to miss you. Enjoy your retirement, and call me for a golf round.
That sounds good. I'll be around. So,
All right.
And Lisa's gone now. She's helping those people, but the animal control ordinance will be coming up sometime.
Yep.
And I've been working on that for years, and I told Lisa that I would come back as a citizen and present that to you guys. So.
And we'd be glad to have your service if you'll do that, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
John, I also would like to thank you for your service to the county. I believe I knew you just about the day you walked in the door, and ever since. So, a fine job, and I appreciate you more than you'll know.
Talk about that fertilizer ordinance about 5 or 6 when you were on board.
Only on the other one. That's exactly right. Also, Mr. Chairman, if I may request that we workshop the list that he provided us. I think that's an excellent idea, what the commissioners did many years ago, where if we could give a piece of property to somebody for them cleaning it up and get it back on the tax roll if the property's not worth any more than the abatement costs are, and we can get somebody private to do that, I think it's a win-win situation.
It truly is.
Excuse me?
They're also paying the back taxes on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, if there's any way we can get another one of them programs going, I'd vote for it, so.
Let me run something else by you. You know that back in the day he's talking about, none of these code cases came before the commission at one time. You want to do that again? I'm just kidding on that, but that's true.
Mr. Sammons,
I know, I remember.
Mr. Chairman.
Harvey?
You know, I had a case this week or last week that came to me, and it came to me that the gentleman wanted to sell his property, but there was a derelict mobile home down the road, and the new owner wanted to build, and he said, I don't want to build there unless that one's going to be abated. He knew it was on our list, but it's way down the list. And I think when we have this workshop, and I'm just going to throw this out for your comment, maybe you can, I think that when we had those unusual cases, because that's an unusual case, that we could possibly move an abatement up in order for us to get a building permit for a house down the road. Now, maybe we could say, okay, once you file for your building permit, we'll move that one up the ladder. But I think that has merit, and I think it's time for us to think out of the box. So, you know.
We can do that.
Yeah. Thank you again for everything. I've been here 3.5 years. You've always been professional to me. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and
Enjoy
if you're
retirement.
having that discussion at a workshop, even though I'm retired, I'll be happy to come and sit in.
Good. Well, we'd enjoy that.
Yeah, we appreciate
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Bye, John.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Seeing how Commissioner Lible brought that up, I wouldn't mind expanding on it a little bit. The Planning Commission used to be a quasi-judicial body like the ZBOA is. And I understand because of some controversial issues back years ago, I think he was here when it happened, that they changed it from being that to that it was just a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. I would like to also, at some point in a workshop, discuss the possibility of making the Putnam County Board of County Commissioners the body that it is appealed to, not the body that it, and so if it goes to the Planning Commission and it's passed by the Planning Commission, nobody cares about that particular one, that we don't have to hear every single case and go through it. We only have to hear the one that's appealed to the board. And if there would be an issue with that, I don't know what it would be, but.
Mr. Chair, if I could, in response
sir.
to
Go ahead.
Mr. Turner, that is an excellent idea. Before the recession, our packets, our agendas, it was this high, and we're building again. We watched it shrink, and it's coming back up, and that would allow more time for stuff that matters. I think it's a great idea. I would like to do that.
We'll move that to our workshop. All right. All right, now we'll move on to appointments. Guess I'll start with Commissioner
I have
Lyon.
none at this time, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Pickens. Commissioner Turner.
I have none, thank you.
I have none.
Okay, and I have none. And so with that, we'll move to our county administrator, Mr. Suggs.
You do have this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have, I'd like to give an update today, have Mr. Gass give an update today on our debris removal.
You have this.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
We are closing down or winding down the debris removal process. It's good that we got the $1 million because that pays for the first 30 days of this operation that we have for this year. We're going to be close to 300,000 cubic yards of material. Last year it was only 100,000 cubic yards, so this is going to be a very expensive operation. It was the consensus of the board to open the fairgrounds for the citizens to have debris disposal. So I wanted to get a consensus from the board again that we can close it because we've had very few people coming in there recently. And the contractor's 90 days are up this weekend, so they need to try to get everything straightened up and cleared up and moved out. If I could get the consensus of the board to go ahead and notify the contractor that we're going to close that down, then we'll get that prepared for turn over back to the fairgrounds. And hopefully we'll have everything completed by this weekend.
Mr. Chair.
Oh, hold it. Commissioner Harvey.
Mr. Gass, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're going to shut it down, you want to shut it down effective Sunday or Saturday?
We
Or
want to shut it down effective as soon as we can because their 90 days per their contract is up Saturday.
Okay, but that doesn't give our citizens a lot of time to prepare.
We basically have had nobody using it. We've had
But the
people-
minute we shut that down, they're gonna be lined up,
I
and you
know.
know that. And that's when the phones ring. So could we give them, I'm sure it'll make the newspaper tomorrow. If I was writing the article, it might. Brandon, thank you. But could we give them a little bit of day's notice for this?
Well, Mr. Chairman, can't they still take it to the regular landfill?
Yeah, they can.
They could take it to the landfill, but there's a charge at the landfill, or they would go against their allotment. The only free disposal was at the fairgrounds. And that's the whole thing, is that this material has had to be kept totally separate from the regular storm debris because it wasn't collected by the contractor. The contractor's just getting paid to manage it. And we've got to get that closed out.
Mr. Chairman, since I still have the floor, if you don't mind, then why can't we close it down in East Palaca? Now, hear me out before you pass out, okay? And allow people that are bringing their hurricane debris to the landfill this week, that we're not gonna charge them and we're not gonna go into their allotment. I mean, they're doing us a favor by not allowing, so it's a compromise here. So how do you feel about that? If we can identify the hurricane debris, give them a few days, you know, this is hurricane.
If the board wishes to waive the fees, that's the board's.
Just for a few days. I'm just talking till Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock, end of story. Saturday, maybe. I'm just saying we need, and then that clears us up in East Plaquemine. We can shut the gate and move on.
I have no issues with that. If the board wishes to waive those fees, I cannot waive those fees, so.
If I need to jump in. That would require, I believe, approval of the solid waste disposal district to make that decision.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, when were you requesting to shut the gates officially? Was it Saturday? Friday?
I really wanted to try to do it last week, but because it was the consensus of the board to open it, I had to bring it to you guys to have a consensus to close it. If we go past the contract limits, then it will be additional funds to the contractor to manage that, or we'll have to make other arrangements to try to get that material moved.
Mr. Chairman.
Because we're approaching our 90 days, and the reason we had the 90 days in the contract is because the first 30 was reimbursed at 85% by the federal government, and the next 60 at 80. So we tried to get all of the advanced money back without dropping down to the 75%. So that's why we had such a short time frame on this debris removal.
Commissioner Lible?
Mr. Manning, did we convene the solid waste district to get that consensus before, or was it just us five to open the fairgrounds up?
That was an administrative decision.
I didn't understand. Say it again.
That was that's a decision I made as administrator.
So
It didn't require any board approval. It was, I'm just talking about waiving fees at the dump site.
okay, all right, that's good. So,
Because
but if we were to,
the material that would be carried in by the contractor would still be paid for by the contractor. So they would pay to dump what the citizens have dumped at the landfill. So we will still be generating revenue even though the citizens didn't have to pay for it.
Mr. Harvey, does that work for you?
I think that, yes, Mr. Lible, but I think that do you have the power and authority if somebody, a citizen, pulls up and says, I was at the East Plaque and they shut the gate and I'm here now? Because they're not prepared to pay.
The only thing I can do is go towards their allotment. I cannot waive fees. All fees are set by the commission,
Okay.
and I do not have the authority to do that.
I wish we'd have known this last month. We could have prepared ourselves for this.
I think you're right. I still have the floor if I could, please. Construction debris. Well, that was gonna be the third round of pickup, and I still see some, particularly in the River Road region.
That is currently being picked up right now all over the county. They've got crews that are running, most of them are making about 3 trips a day to the landfill because it's.
Okay, so we're still in an effort.
We're still in
again.
that, and we're also punch listing everything.
We
we've
talked
had
about calling for dock debris, particularly. I mean, did we actually do that? I mean, I remember you saying that we were going to pick up any kind of stuff out of the river pertaining to docks.
We do not pick up out of the river.
No, I know. They were gonna bring it up by
But
the
the stuff they
highway.
brought up and have placed by the road, we have been picking up and bringing to the landfill.
Okay.
Okay, just a second, Commissioner Turner.
Can they continue to,
Go ahead, Mr. Pickens.
can they continue to bring the dock debris out? How much more time do they have? Because I had somebody ask me that in my neighborhood.
The deadline for putting out debris was November 15th.
Okay.
All right, Commissioner Turner.
Okay, so just so I make sure here, Mr. Manning, the Solid Waste Board has to set all rates and do whatever with the landfill. This board here has no power to make any changes or do anything at the landfill?
Well, I can't, they recommend the rates and they do the analysis on it. But I'm not saying 100% certain that they would, I believe they have to review it and make that recommendation if you're gonna waive rates, but it's not something I have in front of me. I can give you 100% certainty on that right now, but I believe that is the case.
The reason I'm asking is we have a landfill workshop this afternoon. I would sure like to know if what we're gonna be discussing this afternoon is something we have to take to the Solid Waste Council, or can we try to fix it or not?
May I interrupt? In July, the Solid Waste Board convenes to set the assessments, but in September, the Board of County Commissioners sets the fees. That's part of the fee packet that you pass the second meeting in September. So I don't think you have to convene as the Solid Waste Board to waive a fee that the board set in September.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Harvey.
One last thing. Commissioner Pickens asked the question about the docks and people bringing them out. If you shut the East Palaca site down, if I pull up with a dock, it's going to go against my allotment?
Docks were not allowed at the East Palatka. Only vegetative debris was the only thing allowed.
Okay, so what's going to happen if I pull up to the gates at the,
It will go against your construction
or I
demolition
pay
debris
a fine,
allotment.
or pay a fee? Fine.
Yes, sir.
I wish we'd have had a lot more time. We need to let our citizens know that, I understand that it's winding down. My other question, since I still have the floor, is this. We have areas that were completely, the ditches were destroyed by the contractor. I can tell you on St. John's Avenue, Peven Lane, that was completely annihilated. In Alarcon, on McGill Street, they had just paved it, the contractor put down grass. That area got screwed up by the contractor picking up with this machine he picked up with. How are we enforcing that they're gonna clean these areas up?
We've got punch lists that people have called in to us.
Okay.
And we will follow up with that, and it's the contractor's responsibility to make it right. But if it is on the county right-of-way, that's the reason it is placed on the county right-of-way, is because if damage is done to it, it's the county right-of-way. And they can make it as good as they can, but the FEMA requirements are that everything has to be machine loaded. And it's almost impossible to run a machine on the grass without doing some kind of damage. No hand loading is reimbursed by FEMA, so it all has to be machine loaded. And unfortunately, we were extremely wet after this hurricane, and then we had a nor'easter after that, which dumped more water on us. And, you know, to pick up the debris, it left tracks. It created issues. And they will attempt they're fixing fences now. They're trying to fix culverts. They're trying to reimburse people for issues that they've had.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, since I still have the floor, one last thing. If Ms. Papella is correct in her statement, then I believe the board could grant you the authority for a few days to be selective at the landfill. And when you see somebody coming up there that was headed to the East Palaca site, that you could do that. You could waive some fees. And I believe if Ms. Papella is right about that, this commissioner would like to see that just for a few days, I'm sure it wouldn't be many, and it's not going to be a massive rush out there. I just think it would be the right thing to do, that's all.
Just to go, if you are proposing that, I would want a set date, finish date. Whatever that happens to be.
Well, today's Tuesday, we could do it by Friday. We could do it by, what would you, I mean, you're your department head, what do you feel comfortable?
If we're gonna give free days, it needs to include a Saturday. for the people that actually have a job.
Yep.
They can go out, clean up the last little bit on Saturday and carry it out to the landfill.
Yep.
Just to throw mine in there, I would say 1 week.
I would
Following
say that the best thing would be to have it end at 5 o'clock Saturday.
If I might, how?
Yes, sir.
Do we have an objective standard for him to determine if it's storm debris? Or are you just gonna waive it for all vegetative debris, because we can't have that be a subjective decision?
It would have to take a little bit of judgment on the part of the weighmaster. Most of the storm debris occurred back in October. If they're bringing in a tree with green limbs on it, it may not be storm debris. It may be just clearing debris that they're getting rid of.
I would suggest then that it all be documented with pictures, those determinations.
Okay.
Again, because we don't want to be in a position where it could be perceived as playing favorites.
I agree. So your recommendation is Saturday at 5?
Saturday at 5.
And you'll do it selectively with documentation on that?
Yes.
Now, I do want to say that, Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
You still have the floor, sir.
I do want to say, even that 300,000 cubic yards, we know people took advantage of putting stuff out there that wasn't hurricane debris. We know that. And that's sad, but they did. And, you know, they had a tree that needed to come down, they put it out there. But the reality is, we'd have picked up the tree anyway. Down the road, Waste Pro would have picked it up under their contract. If it would have been cut up, if it's a new tree, not hurricane related, and if it was cut up to size and it fit.
But if it's greater than 4 inches in diameter,
That's what I'm
they
saying.
would not pick
Exactly.
it up. It's just
So,
limbs
yeah.
that.
Do we need to make a motion on this?
Yes, to waive fees.
If you're going to waive the fees,
yes.
yes, sir. But before we move to that, I want to cover the contractor that's at the fairgrounds. Okay, when's he planning on leaving?
They're planning to finish all the debris removal by Friday.
Okay, now I would like that before they leave the premises, that they check with the fair board and make sure that that is cleaned up to their specifications, because last time we ended up with quite a mess that luckily Public Works got over there and got it cleaned up. But I personally do not want to see that again. I want to make sure the contractor cleans up their
Has that
mess
done.
and to the satisfaction of the fair board.
I agree.
Okay.
I will get with Mr. Newbold and make sure that,
Thank you.
Where is all the sawdust at, or the grindings? Are they still at the fairgrounds?
most of the grindings have been delivered to Georgia Pacific.
Okay, I also noticed out on the Alford or Moats property, whichever one it is, they were doing some also. Were you taking any public debris out there, or was it just contractor debris out there in Francis?
It was just contractor debris there.
Okay, and so are you also closing that site down too by Saturday?
That site's closing down. Right now, there's only 2 sites really open, and probably after tomorrow, the landfill will be the only place that debris is coming to from the contractor.
Okay.
That gives them time to get all the mulch removed from the facilities and start getting those back to a normal status.
GP buy it all?
No. We had some that came to the landfill because GP was closing down on the weekends, and, you know, they have to move 7 days a week. So 2 days a week it was coming to us, but GP has been taking a good percentage of it. We have an alternative. If GP closes down again, they're going to ship it to Gainesville Regional Utilities and at their wood waste utility there.
Really?
They being who?
The
Who's gonna
contractor.
ship it? Okay. So it's up to them to remove it?
It's up to them to remove it, but we pay them by the mile where they take it to.
So it would cost us more money.
It'll
Would
cost
we get
us,
enough money to sell it to them to even pay for the shipping?
no, but we do get the recycling credit for it, for our solid waste report to the state.
Well, I haven't gone and actually looked at the stuff, but isn't it something that we could use as mulch around driveways and what have you?
We have enough that we generate at the landfill that we give to the public free of charge. We have enough material when we grind what's been brought in by the contractor. There's going to be plenty of mulch for citizens to utilize.
Maybe that's something else, Mr. Chairman, we might get Brandon to put in the newspaper for us if he could, was, that there's free mulch available at the landfill if people want it.
Yep.
That way we don't have to take up the landfill with the mulch, we don't have to pay them to haul it to Gainesville, and I'm assuming we would still get recycle credits if we give it back to somebody to go put on a driveway or a yard, I would assume.
That's correct. The one thing I do advise against is, it's fine for doing driveways, but you got to remember that a lot of this is diseased wood that has fallen. It has not been heat treated. It has not been treated like a commercial mulch. It has a lot of pine in it. I wouldn't recommend it up next to a house because it could attract termites. It's not like your cypress mulch or your commercial mulches that are available, but for driveways or out in the yard, it's a great material for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments?
Before the vote, if I might,
Yes, sir.
one last comment. I'll take a look at, I hadn't had the opportunity, I didn't know this was coming up, to look at the solid waste disposal district and what they're tasked with. But I will look at that. The solid waste, the landfill, that is an enterprise fund. So if by chance there is a requirement that they have an input on this decision that you all are going to vote on, and you do vote to waive fees, and that is something that they should have had input on, I will just let you know that the possibility would exist that you would have to reimburse those waived fees from the general fund back to the enterprise fund.
Okay. All right, now,
That is a correct statement. Unless you convene a special meeting of the Solid Waste Board to ratify whatever you vote on.
okay, now that's down the road.
Yes, there's, because it's obviously made up of more than just the 5 here.
Okay, so let's reiterate that we're looking at waiving the tipping fees for the storm debris brought to the landfill up until 5 o'clock Saturday, this coming Saturday.
December 16th.
Okay.
Correct?
4 only items identified and documented that the Waymaster will do based on Hurricane Irma. Is that right?
That's correct.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman?
Motion, Mr. Harvey?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that item forward as stated.
Okay, we have a proper motion.
I'll second that motion.
We have a proper second. Anyone want to discuss this?
Well, I think that we need to close the other ones like our sanitation director has asked us to do. And I only think it's right that we give everybody this last little bit of notice before we close them and give them the opportunity to get up the last little bit for the procrastinators. So yes, I think we need to do this.
Okay. Seeing discussions are closed, and let's go for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those against, same sign. So moves.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just before Mr. Gass leaves the podium, Mr. Gass, would you do me a favor? Would you reach out to each one of the municipalities and just talk with them and make sure that they have no areas of concern or areas that may have been missed prior to shutting down this collection service? Because I just think it's prudent for us to be good neighbors and just check with them before we make sure that the contractor leaves town.
We will do that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, and while you are there, you have two items, I believe, but one of them is this agenda item on the appointment of a county commissioner serve public safety coordinating.
Yes, sir. This item came up. This is the appointed representative to the Board of the County Commissioners to the Public Safety Coordinating Committee.
I'll jump in on that. There's,
Please.
the statute says that is either, well, it says first that it shall be the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners, but it may be another county commissioner or designee. I know when Commissioner Harvey was chairman, he did act on that board, and I believe they even voted Commissioner Harvey as chairman of that committee. And I believe he has an interest in continuing to serve. So that's why this issue is on here.
Yes, sir, and I wanted to bring up at the last meeting, I chaired that meeting. There's a lot of things going on that Commissioner Harvey is very much involved in, and the board there, yeah, I told them it doesn't hurt my feelings at all, but they would prefer to have Commissioner Harvey, and so that's my recommendation is.
Well, I cooked for him, why wouldn't they,
That's
right?
right.
Would you make that in the form of a motion, Mr. Chairman?
I'm not
Can't make
sure
a
that I
motion.
can make
And
that
under
motion.
Robert Rules of Order, the chairman can make a motion.
Well, he can, but certainly anybody else could make that
I
motion as
move
well.
that, will you let Larry Harvey continue in that role?
So we have a proper motion for Mr. Harvey to continue on the Public Safety Coordinating Board. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a proper second. We'll open it for discussion. Seeing none, we'll close the discussion. We'll open it for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against also say aye. So it moves. You are now the.
Thank you.
Okay, and
Emergency item.
The emergency item now.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, this is an emergency item that came up. We discussed it earlier today. We'll need it, we'll need a motion to accept this item on the agenda, move forward. It is for emergency item. It's a funding source request for Hurricane Irma road repairs. We need to make sure that we have enough money in our funds to pay our bills for Hurricane Irma. So this item was put together by Ms. Papel and Mr. Tompkins from the Public Works Department. So if you have any questions, we'll be more than happy to answer them. There was we had $375,000 budgeted. We've exceeded those funds by an additional $66,850. And so we will need to move from our general fund contingency to the board approval to make sure our bills are paid.
Okay, Commissioner Harvey?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the past, previous years, departments had contingencies built in. And this year, Ms. Papel went through there and pretty much cleaned that up. And now we're responsible when these things happen. And I applaud you for doing that. Just wanted to bring that to the people's attention that years past, we would just move money inside the department. Now it's going to be up to the county commissioners to do that. And I thank you for that. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
All right, do we have any more discussion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the use of general fund and transportation fund contingency funds for the tune of $66,850.
Second.
That's the general fund amount.
Right.
375 for the
375
transportation amount.
Yeah, 375 total. Thank you.
Okay, we have a proper motion and a proper second. Open for discussion.
I'd also open that up just for any public input, since this wasn't on the regular agenda and when there was public comment on issues.
Any public comment for or against? Seeing none, we'll close that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
who seconded the motion?
Mr. Lyle.
Mr. Lible.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a proper first, proper second. We'll move on. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those against, same sign. So moves. All right, we will now move to our county attorney, Mr. Manning.
Is there another, is this, 1 second, please.
It looks like same thing.
Is this from Coney? This came this morning. Oh, workshop, never mind.
We're good.
Never mind.
Okay.
Just clarifying something for the workshop. I don't think I have anything further.
All right. With that, we'll have commissioner comments, and we'll start with Commissioner Kern.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to know, are you planning as chairman to be the liaison member between this board and the Chamber of Commerce, or not? That's one of the duties of the chairman, is to go and attend the board of directors meeting once a month, and I know that Administrator Suggs has mentioned to me that he was planning on trying to go, but if you're not, I think that there's an option to hand that off if you prefer, or go one or the other.
I wouldn't have a problem going unless there is a commissioner who would prefer
Well,
go.
I think if you don't mind going, that you should go as chairman of the board.
Then I'll go as
But
the,
if for some reason you don't feel like you can,
Oh, no,
or
no.
whatever, that's a different situation, but I think we need representation between this board and
Okay.
the chamber.
All right, consider it done. I'll take it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one thing, and I'm glad Press is in the room. We had a email. One of our local businesses wanted a letter of support from us to use a lane out in Hastings area, just right at the county line. Wildwood Lane, I guess, to access 207 from their mine out there. Mr. Tompkins, could you address that just a little bit? I know St. Johns County kind of asked for that, so where are we at on that?
We are doing our research on it.
Okay.
It is a somewhat complicated issue, and I've gotten with Mr. Suggs
Okay.
and Mr. Manning on it. I think Mr. Suggs has a comment on it also.
Yeah, Mr. Tompkins and I met briefly yesterday on this request, and there's some, he's pulling some information regarding interlocals and agreements for maintenance and things on the particular road in question. And until we can actually look at that, do our due diligence and research that, we need some time to move on that.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
If I could weigh
Yes.
in on that. When we permitted the mine on the Putnam County side, you have two. There's one on St. Johns County side for that shell rock. That documentation is well vetted and should be in planning development in the form of a record. Barrel Factory Road was also in that mix, as you well know.
I was in St. John's.
If you don't want to recreate the wheels, what I'm saying, go look that up. We went through all
We're
this.
looking through all our records right now, planning and zoning, our records, and we've also talked to St. Johns County. So we're trying to get all the information together to be able to bring it back to you in a concise report.
Okay. Now, and just so I understand this too, my understanding is if we allow them to use that, they're responsible for the repairs and upkeep of that road.
There's a lot of language in the reports we're
Okay.
reviewing
I mean,
right
it's not gonna be back on to the county to be responsible for the maintenance of that road.
Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what we're looking into, getting the records of the previous agreements and seeing who was required to repair what.
Okay.
Good. And the other thing, I want to thank everyone who came out to the Town of Interlaken's Christmas celebration. It was really a great time and a great crowd. And I would like to wish all the citizens of Putnam County a Merry Christmas and a very successful and Happy New Year. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you're welcome. And Commissioner Lible?
Okay, skipping over, that's fine. I'd like to commend the residents of Melrose for braving the cold front Saturday for a wonderful parade. They're very creative in Melrose. It's just, you guys, I know you had prior commitments, but that is always a very fun parade, and it was no exception because of the weather this year. Also, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, especially staff and everyone we work with, and a prosperous new year also. Thank you.
All right. And Commissioner
Thank you.
Pickens?
Yeah, I just want to commend Yvonne Parrish for 13 years of commitment to Putnam County, and John Salmons for some 21 years. Thank you for the service, and I hope you enjoy retirement. Also, congratulations to Lori Parker for Employee of the Year, and just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas.
Mr. Smith, did you want to put in, I figured you'd already spoke, and so with that, I'm surprised that we didn't mention, but we do have a parade in Willaca this Saturday, correct? So if everyone could be there, I know that Commissioner Harvey would throw me under the bus because I'm not going to be there. My wife and I have been married for 22 years, and our anniversary is on the 16th, and so I'll be spending my day with her. But we're actually going to go to the Alhambra, and see the Christmas story. With that, thank you everyone for being here, and have a very, very Merry Christmas. And with that, we're adjourned.